Today you will see these three subjects, and we start with Gallimimus, because he was part of an unconventional friendship. Under normal circumstances, our gully would certainly have been devoured in an instant. However, it's not up to us to judge what's normal. And their bizarre date soon ended anyway. Dino said goodbye and disappeared. Nevertheless, subject number 1 did not hesitate and marched to annoy the other dinosaurs as well. He wanted to be friends with everyone so much that he tried to bring this guy some slack. Notwithstanding, he was rejected. But Maya Saura, there is hope for this. And she made Gully very happy. And somewhere in another dimension and in another time, triplets have just been born, enjoying the care not only of their parents, but also the protection of their pink interspecies uncle. The place of their birth was full of life, as evidenced by the reproduction of these stegosaurs nearby. However, the cries of hungry cubs can attract the attention of hungry carnivores. And instincts, and their mom tells two cubs to hide. And when darkness fell, only meant an advantage for the Leoforos. Because he loves the darkness. He sees it better than anyone else. Also, Stegosauruses came to the aid of the Triceratops family. However, even they could not stop the agile Dilophosaurus. And since this place was stained with blood, the most experienced of the herd ordered a strategic relocation. The light reflecting of the water can help them a little in their defense. Anyway, the Dilophosaurus' chase didn't want to be ended. And the more they made noise and left bloody trails around them, the more they can summon other potentially much larger and more dangerous carnivores. And pteranodons. However, they had no idea that the new parents were pumped with adrenaline and did not let their young be endangered. Even by those unfledglings. Anyway, the family needed to move on, as the cubs were no longer satisfied with consuming their parents' vomit. And since they kept hearing some monsters around them, they were happy to have Uncle Stegosaurus on their way to find food. And that brings us to the journey of the cutest representative of this apocalyptic island, Evrima, Hypsilophodon. This tiny creature inhabits temperate forest and floodplain areas with a mild climate. That's probably why this subject chose this particular place as his final destination. I really hope that he survives, because in the place he chose there lived a lot of toothy cubs for whom the Hypsi would be a great lunch. And yet this little creature only cared about one thing in life, and that was to reproduce, to help its cute species increase in numbers. And by the way, in reality, no evidence has yet been found that the Hypsi is feathered, but what's not here yet might be in future. But now let's move back to subject number 2's herd, whose numbers have dropped slightly. And whose stomach contents are also dropping very quickly as they graze the entire bush in 1 second. And thanks to the daylight, the danger from the Leoforos was no longer so great. And subject number 2 apparently missed a feel of danger. Anyway, the adults in the herd were missing the action. And the hormones released by the presence of the cubs also drove them to the action. The predator managed to escape. He was lucky. Otherwise, this adult Triceratops could just make a flat out of him. And our little one almost managed to do that too, if he hadn't had 2 left hands. Meanwhile, our friendly gully is racing to make friends somewhere where the grass is greener. And even though it was an omnivore, that is, half carnivore, like this one over there, he changed his mind about wanting to be friends with that. And while wandering along the west trail, he heard something that he absolutely not wanted to be a friend with. If it weren't for the fact that Gallimimus can accelerate by honking, aka pressing F key, he would have certainly ended up right in the grip of the carnivores, as he almost ran into it himself, so he covered himself in mud to heal better. And in the dark night it was time to leave the west trail. Gallimimus reached a place he realized he didn't want to be in at all. And just as he turned to go away, our scanning technology failed, and after being reconnected, Gally had new bleeding. It took a while to get the night vision cap on. But once he did and saw these little guys, being loud as he bolted away. And since he had a crush for dinos, he stared at this piece for a very long time. But then he better get over it. On the other hand, our little trike enjoys the eating from bushes and the dancing with others. And since the constant presence of the adults gave him much needed courage, this trike teenager tried to chase away potential predators from the territory he was currently in. But where they were, they had already eaten it all, so they had to move somewhere else and eat everything there too. Their heavy bodies almost caused earthquakes, which aroused the curiosity of everyone around. The interesting thing is that none of those species we see there, those would never have met in reality. Either they lived in different eras or on different continents. That's why they sometimes don't understand each other. And so many herbivores sitting on one place only meant that sooner or later one of those species would get angry. And they would want to argue among themselves about who was the master of this territory. Fortunately, our subject spotted a Sarah, a carnivore, in the distance, and that briefly united everyone in defense again. And that brings us back to our cute Hypsilophodon building a nest. He tried to proceed cautiously, as the place he chose for nesting had an ideal climate, but it did not have the ideal number of predators. But Hypsi's desire to build a nest as quickly as possible drove him to run for building materials constantly. This hard-working single mom doesn't give up. Unless she hears some beast nearby. Another interesting fact is that some scientists previously believed that Hypsilophodons lived in trees, but today this view is abandoned. It was probably fast light runner that moved on the ground, so its nests were almost certainly also on the ground. Well, our subject chose the wall. Hopefully that clutch of eggs will turn out well for him. And I sincerely hope that Galik's eggs laying will be also successful, since we find out that he is a female. She was just checking the surroundings to see if it was suitable, creating her egg cavity. And not long after, she could lay them and sit on them for long time. And in the meantime, our trike has grown up a bit to the age at which he wanted to find a partner. But for now, he was only finding Hypsies. He was a good guy and enjoyed the presence of Hypsies. Who wouldn't enjoy them anyway? Well, our guy not only didn't meet any other Triceratopses, but he also didn't even meet anyone who would try to fight with him. And since, as I mentioned before, he was a good guy, so he definitely didn't want to fight with any other herbivore. And since he doesn't have time to gain any combat experience because of this, we can only hope for what will happen to him in the future. An example of his unpreparedness may be that he became afraid of his own stomping after he grew to a certain size. Subject number 1 would also like to let some of her kids to grow some size, but the eggs were apparently unfertilized, so the female decided to take her frustration out with some action. She mistook Pachy for an omni, and luckily she missed the mark. So at least she told the real raptor what she thought of him. After a while she got thirsty, and like the biggest boss, she took a few sips right in front of this giant monster and this giant monster. But honestly, she only noticed them at least second. Well, at this point, she couldn't afford to get out of the character, so she continued as if she were a troll, until the T-Rex got up. Then she put her feet on her shoulders. When I focus on subject number 2 again, it is clear that he has already become enjoying his newly charged masses, and having reached a stage where many predators would rather not even see him. But the cubs, those were very happy to see him, since they didn't know he's so lame. At least Drake took him to the edge of sanctuary and then back to the meadow. Well, should they have gone there? Anyway, Diablo joined this pair, and also someone else. And at this moment, everyone still hoped that he might let them pass. But the Tyrannosaurus is a brutal killing machine, and our little trike was slowly starting to realize that it wouldn't be so easy. And in the moment his dibble body let out a groan of pain, he was more than sure that this lack of combat experience would be clearly evident here. And this dance continued until the early hours of the morning. But the predators were significantly more dangerous, so the fight could end very soon. Our Triceratops was aware of this and tried to call some other herbivores to help him. However, he only received answers from the attackers. Time to time he tried to stab at least one of the predators here and there. However, he was unable to make any other attacks. That's it. Our trike let out one last cry of sorrow and moved out of the way of those two. So let's hope they feast and they don't hitchhike our trike. Small Hypsilophodon tries to blend in with its environment while collecting twigs for its nest. And as soon as he notices the predatory cub, he uses his abilities to climb the trees to save his and predatory cubs can fight among themselves. And because he could also hear the howling of Trudons in the distance, he was a little stressed. I mean she was also driven by the desire to build a nest and finally produce an offspring. The female worked diligently, unaware that there was another single mother nearby, which sadly was in great trouble. Indeed, the best place to bring a new life into the world. And since our Gallimimus female couldn't bring new life to the world, she wanted to, at least, go wild. Oops. It's important to at least drive those carnivores away, so they know that Delta now belongs to someone else. And that goes for all the brazen, fully carnivorous creatures. And what about our Hypsi? She already managed to lay eggs, but the gestation of the eggs themselves is very energy intensive. She had to be quick with replenishment, so she could run back to the eggs and sit on them because the new life was not long in coming. The female was looking at her young ones with interest. Everything seemed perfectly fine and idyllic. Until we notice that the female began to refuse to feed one of her kids. So let's leave this single mom to reflect on her actions for now. And let's check what Gallimimus is doing, because he has a bit of work to do. She noticed the Allosaurus in the distance. However, she didn't let his companions know at all. And even though she knew about Allosauruses, she still got bitten. She's a crazy old female. The female has failed at many things in her life, such as this jump onto a rock. However, she wasn't the only one who had bad luck on the island. It was completely carnivorous creature, but our female felt sorry for it, because she wanted to have cubs. And this ptera reminded her of cubs a bit. Anyway, the patrolling Pachycephalosauruses didn't have the same feelings. And how is subject number 2 doing? He tried to protect unwanted cubs, and unfortunately his lack of experience shows again. And even in a way you would rather not even see. And the moment the second raptor appeared, it was clear to our trike that things would not end well. Triceratops had no choice but to move to the water and hope that it was not inhabited by the dinosaurs. -1 attacker, but our guy didn't know yet that there were actually 3 raptors. Although there was no dinosaurs in the water, the subject still failed to protect the baby. And this catch wasn't enough for the raptors. Probably because they knew already that our trike guy is lame. After a while, the trike noticed that one of the raptors was running out of stamina. So he definitely didn't want to leave him lying around. When he finally decided to leave them alone, he noticed the newcomers. Well, we will see how it turns out for him later, because now it's time to see what our fallen galley is up to. She was just refreshing herself in this safe water and noticed something red further up on the logs. So she went to investigate it closer. But she discovered too late that it wasn't another Gallimimus, but some kind of predator. I have a feeling that if it weren't for the injuries from the previous fight, she might still be alive. So let's hope that our trike will survive its fight with the newcomers. But sometimes hoping is simply not enough, and this strike will no longer pass its genes. So let's move on to something more positive now, because our Hypsi managed to pass on her genes. And after she had fully fed her last cub, so the cub too could set off on its own journey. Our female Hypsi also set off on the journey of another life. And this is what the lives of these three species of dinosaurs might look on the Triassic server also. And I thank you very much for watching.